She was engaged to my brother, and now she's my girlfriend. The ring we returned. The day Elena handed my brother's ring back, the sky did that late October thing where it couldn't decide between rain and light, so it did both, silver drizzle and a slant of sun across the kitchen floor. Ben set the velvet box on the table like it was a live wire and stared at it, jaw tight. I dried my hands on a dish towel and tried not to look at Elena at all. They spoke in the brittle, overly careful voices of adults navigating a cliff edge. It's not about love, Elena said, palms open. It's about the shape of the life we're trying to make. I don't fit into yours. You don't fit into mine. She sounded exhausted, and kind. That was the worst part, no villains, just two good people who went as far as they could and discovered a wall. Ben nodded too many times. Yeah. He wasn't a nodder by nature, which told me everything. I felt like a spectator in a room I'd lived in for years. The lemon plant in the window. The calendar with my lesson times circled, piano students who'd arrive at 4 with nervous fingers and sheet music curled at the edges. The familiar objects made the moment feel weirder, like an earthquake happening in a grocery store. When it was over, Ben grabbed his coat. I need air, he said, voice small, and walked out the back door. Elena stood frozen for a beat, then exhaled in a way that folded her shoulders. I believed, with a sudden ache, that she'd tried. They both had. I should have followed my brother. Instead, I said the only thing that felt true. Do you want tea? My mouth had a habit of choosing gentleness while my brain was still loading. Elena let out a short, grateful laugh. Please. She touched the ring box once, like a farewell, then tucked her hands into her sleeves, that nervous habit I'd seen 20 times, and pretended not to notice. She was still wearing the soft gray sweater I'd teased her about, the one that matched the sky. Her eyes were a complicated brown, dark coffee, not chocolate, and they looked even darker now. We were quiet while the kettle sang. When I handed her a mug, our fingers brushed. It was a small static shock that had nothing to do with wool. I looked up too fast, caught her looking back, and felt heat climb from my chest to my throat. No. Off-limits wasn't a strong enough phrase for this. Off-planets. Off-physics. I'm sorry, she said, and I realized she meant for the whole scene, not the hand brush. For all of it. For bringing it to your house. It's okay, I lied, because the truth, I don't know where to put my hands or my loyalty or my eyes, wouldn't help. We stood by the sink, two people orbiting a velvet box. Outside, a breeze rattled the lemon leaves. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked at nothing. Elena lifted the mug and inhaled the steam like it might offer instructions. I'll bring him back, she said, meaning the ring. When he's ready. Or I can mail it, if that's better. Bring it, I heard myself say. We can, do it together. Return the ring, return something else I couldn't name. Her mouth tilted. Together, she repeated softly, as if testing the word for splinters. The kettle clicked as it cooled. The light shifted. The ring sat between us, small and mythic. I should have felt only grief for my brother. Instead, grief braided itself with a second feeling I refused to examine, and I stared hard at the lemon plant until the two threads separated again. It felt like I was learning a new instrument on the day of the recital. When she left, Elena paused in the doorway. Thank you for the tea, she said. And for not picking a side in front of me. I nodded because speech seemed dangerous. After the door closed, I pressed my forehead to the cool glass and watched her walk down the steps, the gray sweater, the careful spine. I had the ruinous thought, she looks lighter, even sad. Like someone who finally told the truth out loud. I texted Ben. I'm here when you are. Then I stood at the sink and washed 2 mugs as if clean cups could fix any of this. Ben didn't come back that night. He sent a single message, crashing at Mike's. Don't wait up. I sat at the upright piano and let my fingers wander through old standards until the house stopped feeling like it would crack if I breathed too hard. At some ungodly hour, I fell asleep on the couch with a blanket pulled over my knees and dreamt in disjointed images: a velvet box, lemon blossoms, Elena's sleeves hiding her hands. Morning helped, a little. Morning is arrogant that way. I made coffee, fed the plant, checked on my Tuesday students, and told myself a story where I was the stable sister who kept the ground from tilting. At noon, while I was labeling beginner scales, my phone buzzed with a number that wasn't saved and didn't need to be. Elena, is now a terrible time? My heart hit something inside my ribs. For what? I typed, then deleted, then, what's up? Ben asked me to drop the ring at your place. He doesn't want to see it yet. If that's okay with you. It wasn't okay with any of us, and somehow that made it kinder. Come by at 3? I sent, because I would be teaching at 4 and a deadline felt like a fence. At 3, she arrived with the box tucked into a canvas tote as if disguising an elephant with a sheet. She stood in my doorway and I saw the night's grief had put a curve under her eyes. Hi, she said, tentative. Hi. I stepped aside. We hovered near the piano, the way you hover near a campfire, too close and you burn, too far and you're cold. She set the box on the closed lid, palms flat on either side like she was steadying a patient. I looked up the return policy, she said. They'll take it back within 30 days. We're fine. Her voice wavered on the last word. Without asking permission, I reached for the kettle again. Tea had become a ritual and I needed ritual. Chamomile okay? Perfect. She watched me move like I might spill and shatter the moment. How's Ben? Avoidant, I said, realizing the honesty was a relief. How are you? Her mouth did the brave not brave thing. Relieved. Guilty about being relieved. Afraid that makes me awful. It makes you human. The water roared and I lowered my voice. You didn't blindside him. I blindsided myself 2 months ago, she said, and then, as if the admission startled her, she leaned on the piano and stared at the framed photo of Ben and me at the county fair, 2 sunburned siblings with matching ridiculous hats. I kept trying to push through it. You know? Like if you don't say the quiet thing out loud, maybe it stops being true. What was the quiet thing? I asked before I could stop myself. Elena looked at me. I felt the answer approach and wanted to both run and set the table for it. She tucked her sleeves up, exposing wrists, and for some reason that felt like a confession already. That I want a life with margins, she said slowly. With quiet Sundays and music in the next room and a house that breathes. Ben wants the city, and noise, and a calendar so full it looks like confetti. I thought I could pivot. He did too. Neither of us was wrong. We were just not the same shape. The kettle clicked. I poured, hands steady. Do you, I began, then stopped. The wrong question hovered. Do you want the music in the next room to be mine? It was so inappropriate my face burned. She took the mug, fingers brushing mine, static again, or something pretending to be, and gave me a searching look I couldn't hold. I'm sorry, she said. I keep ending up here. It isn't fair to you. You're returning a ring, I said. I can boil water. She laughed, grateful for the joke, and we stood inside it for a few seconds. Then the doorbell rang and I jumped. Students, I said. You can stay in the kitchen if you want. Or. I'll go, she said quickly. She lifted the canvas tote again as if it weighed nothing, and I realized she'd come not to offload the ring but to ask me to go with her. To the store. To the counter. To the end of a sentence. I heard myself ask, do you want company? Her relief was a small light. Yes. If you can. After your lesson? I could. I should not. I would. By 5, the sky had traded its confused silver for a clean blue that made the shop's glass cases glint like small glaciers. The jeweler recognized the box like a bartender recognizes a bad idea. He was kind, the way professionals are when they've seen all the versions of this. "We can process the return," he said, and didn't ask why. Elena's hand trembled as she signed. I stood beside her, pretending to study pendant necklaces, reading their tiny price tags as though they contained instructions. When the clerk disappeared into the back, Elena exhaled and leaned against the counter. "I thought it would feel like failing," she said quietly. "It mostly feels like telling the truth." "Sometimes those are the same," I said, then winced at my own fortune cookie wisdom. She turned to me. "You always do that." "Do what?" I tried to sound light. Say the sentence I didn't know I needed to hear. Her smile was tired and real. "You've done it since the first day we met." I remembered that first day perfectly. Ben had dragged her to our family barbecue, all proud, and Elena had complimented my lemon plant with genuine enthusiasm. "It's thriving," she'd said, running a finger under a leaf, and it had felt like a compliment to me. "Occupational hazard," I said now. "Piano teachers are professional sentence sayers." She nudged my shoulder with hers, small, familiar, dangerously sweet. "And tea makers. And kitchen standers. And ring return companions." I looked at the reflection of us in the glass, two women in coats, too close, pretending it was about a transaction. Something ground under my skin like gears catching. I thought about my brother, about loyalty as a verb, not a chain. He'd want me to be kind. He'd want me to be steady. He did not own this woman, and neither did I. The truth could still be a careful thing. We walked out lighter by a ring and heavier with everything else. On the sidewalk, October finally decided to commit to dusk. The first cold crept down my collar. Elena tucked her hands into her sleeves, then stopped and pulled them back out, like she decided to stop hiding even from the weather. "Coffee?" she asked. "I have to teach at 7, I said. "But I can walk you to the corner." We moved in step. Her shoulder brushed mine once, then again. We pretended it was the sidewalk's fault. At the crosswalk, the red hand held us. She looked both ways even when the street was empty, a small, meaningful caution I loved at once and tried not to notice loving. "Mara," she said, my name like a question. I met her eyes. There it was again, that second thread twined with grief, bright and undeniable. If I pulled it, everything would change. The light flipped to white. She hesitated a fraction of a beat, then smiled without saying what she'd almost said. We crossed. Outside the cafe, she stopped. "Thank you," she said, looking not at me but at the corner of my scarf, as if the truth was safest in the periphery. "For today. For the shape of how you are." "I didn't do anything," I said. "You were kind." She finally met my eyes. "You are." I swallowed. "Text me when you get home?" She nodded. We hovered on the edge of a hug, then didn't. It felt like placing a glass ornament on a table and deciding not to touch it again until we could both use two hands. Back at my house, I sat at the piano and played scales until they blurred into a melody that wasn't written down anywhere. At 6:18, my phone lit. "Home. Thank you again." I typed anytime and hated how true it felt. I didn't sleep much. I kept hearing her say margins, kept seeing her hands come out of her sleeves. Kept picturing a life that breathed. The weeks after were a map with no legend. Ben moved through sadness like a person walking across a frozen lake, careful, suspicious of every sound. We ordered takeout and watched inconsequential TV, and I learned the specific silence of a man who'd lost a future he'd been cataloging by SKU. He rarely said Elena's name. When he did, it was with affection that burned at the edges. "She was honest," he said once, at 2 a.m., pausing a documentary. "I'm mad at the honesty, not at her." "I'm sorry," I said, inadequate. "I'll be okay," he answered, and I believed him, because I needed to. Elena texted twice about logistics. "Did you find Ben's jacket?" And I left a book at your place, no rush, and once about nothing, which felt like everything, a photo of her walking in the park at dusk, tree branches black against a violet sky. Thought you'd like the colors, she wrote. I stared too long before writing, I do. Then I put my phone face down like that would make me less responsible for the fact that my stomach had done something entirely unapproved. I told myself rules. I made a list like I was studying for a test. 1. Don't see her alone. 2. Don't imagine anything. 3. Help Ben first. 4. Remember that crushes are weather. They pass. Weather can also settle in for a season. A Thursday in November, the heating clanked like an old man clearing his throat, and my students canceled for the first snow threat. The empty afternoon felt too big. I baked a banana bread because agency is sometimes eggs and sugar, and the smell filled the house with a believable kind of comfort. At 4, there was a knock. I opened the door to Elena on the stoop, hair damp with flurries, cheeks pink. I shouldn't have come without texting, she said immediately, apology already loaded. I was nearby. I brought your Tupperware hostage. She held up the container I'd sent home with her weeks ago filled with soup. I stepped aside. Come in before you become a weather report. She laughed, shaking snow from her coat at the door. It started as a flurry. Now it's a concept. She sniffed the air. Is that banana bread? I felt absurdly pleased. I was bribing the house into feeling warm. We hovered at the kitchen counter like the last time, without a velvet box. The absence was louder than any object. I cut the bread while she poured tea, and when I set a slice on a plate, our hands overlapped. We both lifted our gaze and didn't look away immediately. I miss this house, she said, voice quiet. Not, she stopped. Not the life I almost had. The margins. The music through the wall. She nodded toward the piano. Do you ever play for yourself? Not for students. When I can't translate my brain into words, I said. She smiled. Play for me? There was no good reason to refuse and too many complicated ones. I sat on the bench and let my fingers find a tune that had been haunting the edges of my scales. Soft, deliberate, snowfall music. Elena stood behind me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of her between the notes. When I finished, I kept my hands on the keys a moment too long. That's how home sounds, she said. I turned on the bench. We were close, the kind of close that excuses don't cover. Elena, I said carefully. We have to. I know, she said, equally careful. I know. We both stepped back at the same time, like dancers who remembered the choreography. Tea steamed. Snow needled the windows. The smell of banana bread pretended to be safety. She left 10 minutes later with warm slices wrapped in foil and a promise to text when she got home. After the door shut, I leaned my forehead against the wood and murmured to the empty air, "Don't be an idiot." The air did not respond. Ben started seeing a therapist, his idea, which made me want to hug him and also bake another banana bread. He came home after his third session with a slightly different posture. She said grief doesn't mean I chose wrong, he told me, hand on the back of the sofa. It means I loved the version of the future I made with what I had. And now I have different information. That therapist is expensive but correct, I said. He huffed a laugh and nudged my shoulder. You okay? The question landed in the least convenient place. I'm fine, I said, way too fast. He looked at me. Mara. I'm managing the weather, I said, hoping he wouldn't ask for a forecast. He didn't. He's Saturday, promise me something. Within reason. Promise me if anything ever changes with you and Elena. He paused, actually smirked at my face, which must have done all sorts of guilty gymnastics. You'll tell me first. Not because I get a vote. Because I'd want to hear it from you. My lungs forgot their choreography. Ben would never. I didn't say now. Or tomorrow. Or ever. He scratched his jaw, looking older than me by only 8 minutes and suddenly 10 years. I know you too. You're both margin people. It's not crazy that you hear the same melody. I stared. Are you okay? He shrugged. Ask me in a month. Or a year. I'm not a saint, I'm still mad at Tuesday nights. But I also don't want to live in a world where the only acceptable story is the first one we wrote. I pressed my palms to my eyes until stars appeared. I was trying so hard not to be the villain. Then don't be, he said simply. Be careful. Be kind. Be slow. And for the love of all things lemon plant, don't lie to me. I laughed then, wet and relieved and terrified. Deal. That night, I texted Elena, can we talk? Not urgent. Just, talk. She replied immediately, yes. Tomorrow? Walk by the river? The river was where our family went to make big decisions, buy a house or don't, adopt the giant rescue dog or absolutely don't. It felt right. It felt dangerous. We met at 4, when the light was doing golden hour absolutions on everything ugly. The river moved the way it always did, ignoring human drama, insisting on downstream. We walked in parallel, hands in pockets, our steps choosing a shared tempo. Elena, I said, then lost the sentence like a bad reception call. I need rules. Me too, she said. I made a list. She pulled a crumpled paper from her coat. We stopped. She read, 1. No secrets from Ben. 2. No rushing. 3. If either of us feels like we're rewriting history to excuse ourselves, we stop and go sit with that. She grimaced. 4. We call my mom before Christmas because she will absolutely sense it and ask in front of a pie. I laughed, startled and grateful. Good list. I had, don't kiss you until the calendar says we're allowed. Her eyes flicked to my mouth and away. Does the calendar say we're allowed? It says be slow, I said, which wasn't a no, and she heard the chord I didn't play. We walked again. Leaves scraped the path. A kid in a red hat threw bread to geese like he was feeding a plot twist. Elena nudged me. I told my therapist about you. I tripped over absolutely nothing. Your therapist? She said sometimes the right person arrives at the wrong time, and the work is to make time right without breaking yourself to fit it. Elena's voice was steady. I'm not asking you for a secret. I'm asking if we can stand here and tell the truth and keep being careful. Yes, I said, because anything else would be theater. Yes. We didn't kiss. We did stand on the overlook until the cold made our cheeks ache, sharing a single glove between us like teenagers, and somehow that was more intimate than any other option. On the walk back, Elena's shoulder pressed mine, and we didn't apologize to the sidewalk. December arrived with its twinned personalities, festive and cruel. Every commercial was a reminder of futures not happening. Every string of lights tried to take the edge off and mostly failed. Ben started making new plans, New Year's in the mountains with friends, a cooking class with Mike, a half marathon he immediately regretted signing up for. Watching him build a life that wasn't a consolation prize became the thing that let me breathe. Elena and I practiced our rules. We saw each other once a week in daylight, in public, with conversations about everything except the gravitational field between us, until we talked about that too, naming it carefully, refusing to either glamorize or trivialize it. One afternoon, we sat in a bookstore cafe, each with 3 books stacked like talismans. She slid a paperback across to me, poems by someone whose name felt like a bell. There's one in here about returning a ring, she said wryly. Of course there is. I opened to a line that hit so cleanly I put my hand on the table to steady myself. We gave the circle backslash and kept the orbit. I closed the book, throat tight. Okay, universe. I see you. 2 on the nose, she asked. Exactly on the nose. We exchanged Christmas texts that were studiously neutral and burned anyway. On New Year's Eve, Ben sent a photo from the cabin, 3 friends around a fire, cheeks red, my brother's smile unforced. I cried, alone in the kitchen, from the relief of it. January was quieter, blank paper. We added a new rule, therapy, both of us. Elena chose a woman named Ruth who wore excellent scarves. I picked someone who played piano and raised one eyebrow in a way that made me tell the truth sooner. We unlearned narratives that had seemed noble but were actually just fearful. By February, the ground were still crusted with old snow and our carefulness had turned into a habit, a rhythm we trusted. One night after a session, Ben made us pasta and asked, with a steadiness that made my eyes sting, "So, where are you and Elena?" He twirled spaghetti like this was a normal topic. "In the margins," I said. He nodded. "Do you want to be in the book?" "Yes," I said, at the same time that he said, "I want you to be," and then we laughed, shocked by the alignment. "How's your heart?" I asked. "Not broken," he said slowly. "Reshaped. Like it grew a room where the old one used to be." I put my fork down and covered his hand. "You're a good man. Tell more people," he said, deadpan, and we both cracked up. When I told Elena about that dinner, her eyes filled. "He's unfairly generous." "He's messy," I said. "And kind. And choosing joy like it's a discipline." We met at the river again, the air sharper now, and updated the list together. Rule 5, written in her looping script: when it's time to begin, we say it out loud and step forward on purpose. We stared at the sentence like a finish line and a starting gun. I imagined the warmth of her hand, my brother's okay, the river insisting downstream. "Is it time?" she asked, barely above the wind. I looked at her, the gray sweater under her coat, the eyes that knew how to hold complexity without panicking, the woman who had placed a ring on a counter and chosen honesty over choreography. My answer rose without drama or fireworks. It felt like a chord resolving. "It's time." We stepped. Beginning was not fireworks. It was paperwork and text messages and a Saturday spent choosing a couch throw we both liked. It was telling 3 friends and 2 mothers and fielding a variety of expressions. It was Ben coming home from his run, sweaty and proud, and pulling me into a hug that smelled like winter and forgiveness. Elena and I moved slowly even after time announced itself. First kiss, finally, in my kitchen, next to the lemon plant that had grown 2 new leaves without asking permission. We stood there, laughter knocked out of us, and then she touched my face like a person checking a compass. "Hi," she said, as if I had just arrived from a long journey. "Hi," I echoed, lightheaded. We took turns meeting each other's histories. I learned the names of the neighborhoods she'd loved before she met us. She learned that I jotted chord progressions on grocery receipts and left them in coat pockets like fortunes. We built a Venn diagram and lived in the overlap: early mornings, long walks, music in adjacent rooms, the particular intimacy of washing dishes in companionable quiet. There were hard days. Ben came home from a party where someone asked, too loudly, where the ex was, and he wanted to throw a plate but settled for running a mile in the cold and returning with ears the color of warnings. Elena's mother said a sentence with the word loyalty in it and had to be reminded that hearts are not lease agreements. I watched both of them breathe through it, and I learned that love sometimes looks like not making it about your own comfort. On a late March afternoon, the 3 of us sat on the back steps with coffee, the lemon plant between our knees like a fragile treaty. Ben told a stupid joke, Elena rolled her eyes with theatrical patience, I groaned and secretly laughed. It wasn't the life any of us had spelled correctly on the first try. It was the one that fit. That night, Elena fell asleep on my shoulder on the couch, hair clean and damp, breathing slow. I watched a stupid documentary about trains with the volume low and felt a wave of peace so ordinary and so exact it made my throat tight. The ring had gone back months ago. The orbit had stayed. The room inside my heart that had once felt like a wound now felt like a window. We kept our rules, mostly. We broke them, gently, when joy required it. We told the truth even when it meant sitting in silence for a while before the right words arrived. We laughed a lot. We kissed in kitchens. We returned things that weren't ours to keep and kept the things that were. In May, the lemon plant bloomed for the first time, tiny white stars, impossible scent. Elena cupped a blossom in her hands like it might tell our future. We should get a bigger pot, she said. For the plant? I teased. For the life, she said, unabashed, and I realized some people tell the truth like confessions, others tell it like invitations. We repotted the plant. We rearranged the furniture. We called it spring cleaning and meant rebirth. Summer arrived exactly how it always does, late, then suddenly, and the city warmed to the idea of joy. Evening stretched. Street musicians returned. My students wanted to play pop songs with 4 chords and emotions bigger than their hands, and I said yes more than I used to. Elena and I fell into a rhythm that made sense when I said it out loud, mornings apart, our own work, late afternoons orbiting, evenings together more nights than not. We built a small gallery of rituals: Tuesday walks by the river, Thursday pasta, Saturday farmer's market, and the lady who snuck us extra basil like we were co-conspirators. One sticky night in July, after Ben left to meet friends and the apartment was ours, Elena stood at the window and watched the last gold smear out of the sky. I used to think love arrived with trumpets, she said. Now I think it's more like a key you didn't realize you'd been carrying. One day you look down and it's there, warm from your pocket. I set down the dish towel and went to stand behind her, chin on her shoulder, both of us framed by the lemon tree's green. Does the key open anything good? It opens this, she said simply, gesturing to the ordinary miracle, our reflections in the glass, the messy couch, the piano waiting, the night expanding like a held breath released. We told Ben we were thinking about getting a small place together in the spring, nothing dramatic, just a quiet apartment with good light and a corner for the piano. He listened, eyes bright with a complicated pride, then said, I'll help you move. I've become very good at moving. It's an unfortunate skill set. We laughed, and then we didn't, and the hug that followed felt like a chapter ending and beginning on the same page. On a Sunday that smelled like peaches, we met my mother for brunch. She eyed us over her glasses and said, Well, you've finally decided to make the obvious official. She kissed Elena's cheek and asked about her job and stole a piece of toast. On the walk home, Elena squeezed my hand 3 times, the old code for I love you we'd never used before, and I squeezed back, something tender and relieved unfolding inside me like a note I could finally read. We never did anything grand to mark a start. We just lived. We learned the precise comfort of familiar laughter. We called each other out when old narratives tried to sneak back with new costumes. We practiced forgiveness like scales, daily, imperfect, building muscle memory until it sounded like music. One evening toward the end of summer, the 3 of us ate on the back steps again, the lemon plant now shaggy and confident in its bigger pot. Ben told us about a woman he'd met who loved the city noise he adored and kept a calendar that looked like confetti in the best way. He said her name softly, like he'd found it on a map. I caught Elena's eye and watched a quiet joy pass between us for him. After he left, Elena took my hand and pulled me up. Play for me, she said. I did. The melody that had lived in the margins found its way into a song, simple and steady. Elena leaned on the piano, smiling with the kind of ease that doesn't need to be performed. When I finished, she kissed me, warm, certain, with all the time in the world inside it, and whispered, home. We had returned the ring. We had kept the orbit. We had chosen the kind of love that grows in ordinary light, in kitchens and on back steps, with lemon blossoms and second chances and rules we wrote ourselves. It wasn't the story we planned. It was the one we could live in, day after day, together. The end.